Welcome to my podcast. Today's conversation isn't about quarterly results. It's not about the company's worth, and certainly not about metrics. It's about something special. It's about a rare breed of leadership, the evolution of the leader who understands that trust is the real currency of growth. I'm honored to introduce Ross Wainwright, CEO of Perceptyx, an AI-driven company helping organizations transform employee experience. And it just got recognized by Fast Company out of 20,000 companies for innovation. So awesome. Ross has served as CEO also of Alita, Dimension Data, and he spent 15 years in executive leadership roles at SAP, where I got to meet him. And over the years, I've had the privilege of working with Ross and his leadership teams. I've also had the opportunity to watch him lead through chaos, complexity, and growth. What stands out isn't just the success, it's the way that Ross rises through it with integrity, humility, and real gravitas. And he shared that his greatest inflection points weren't tied to the biggest wins, interesting, but the bumps, the bruises, and the moments that really required true courage. Now, in a world where leaders can lead into ego, we see that a lot. Ross models something very different. He leads with service, with transparency, and the understanding that you don't have to be the smartest person in the room to have the greatest impact. So today, we're going to explore how he became the kind of leader others generally want to follow, and why the messy parts of leadership are often where real transformation happens. Ross, I'm so excited to have you. I wish I was there in person in Laguna Beach with you.
Well, nice to see you, Roz. We've been working together for, I gotta think, it's probably close to 25 years. So it's a privilege to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity to participate.
Thank you. We don't get older, we get better. Isn't that a
We
good
do. Well, a little wiser at least, yeah.
thing? So, how has being a father, raising two beautiful daughters, influenced the life that you've built and the choices that you've made along the way?
Certainly it's one of the things I'm most proud of. Although to be clear, I didn't really do the work. I was out running businesses and traveling and meeting customers and building teams. I give my wife a lot of the credit, but it I think we need to make sure that we're paying attention to the really important things in life, and I think our families and our friends and our health are super important. And but it's interesting. My kids, our kids, are in their 30s,
Wow.
and I've actually had an opportunity to work with them. So it's been kind of fun also to work with them in a professional capacity. So definitely, it's been a privilege, an honor, and something that I'm particularly proud of. And although I don't take the credit. I shouldn't take the credit. My wife's done most of the hard work, as has the kids.
What's been the best advice you've given them that they come back and they thank you for it?
It's an interesting relationship when you are the CEO and you're also their dad. And by default, I can only be one or the other. And the default position, I'm their dad. So I'm here to do whatever I can to help them in their careers. And whether it be within our company, they work in different parts of the organization, so they're
Right.
not aligned under me. But so first of all, the role I play as a dad, and I think like any of the parents that are listening to your podcast, we'll do anything to help our kids.
Yes.
But also they've got to realize that they've got to do the work. And I would never have advocated for them to get into the software technology industry, but they found a path, and they're thriving, and I'm super proud of them. I will maybe just provide a point of advice for younger parents. Um, don't miss Halloween, and never miss the Easter egg hunts. Like there's stuff that unfortunately we can't be part of every parent teacher meeting, or the birthdays are, those go without saying, but those Halloweens and Easter egg, like, just don't miss those, right? Make those the priority.
Yeah. So, so true. When you were growing up, I've got lots of interesting questions to ask you. So, growing up, when did you know that you had a natural leadership capability? Like, was it a conscious choice or did it evolve over the years? And maybe share an early experience as a leader.
You know, I don't think leadership per se was a natural place for me early on, but I've always been very competitive. And I think my competition in the earlier stages of the development of my career and as a leader, the competition drove me because I like to win. You know,
Mhm.
I like to be part of winning teams. I like to make an impact. So very early on, actually back in college, I ran for a number of years college pro painters, and you know, I did it for a number of summers. But my second summer, I had, I don't know, 30 people working for me, and we did a couple $100,000 worth of revenue. And, you know, the building piece, the sales piece was fantastic. I loved it. Loved building the pipeline, you know, the delivery and the execution and making sure that my clients were satisfied with the execution. That was perhaps the harder part of the job. But I think early on, I think it was the competitive piece and, uh, and the fact that I realized early on that I had a knack for the sales and I like to build. I like to build things. I love the twists and the challenges and the, you know, the reinvention. Even out at a very early. This was, you know, I was in my early 20s, but it was something that I really enjoyed doing.
I had this thought of you as a little boy building Legos and competing with your friends in the neighborhood. I don't know why.
Well, that happened too, for sure, for sure.
I've heard you say that you grew up in a shark tank early in your career, you know, where you were either survived or you were eaten, which is quite a strong analogy. How did this shape your leadership instincts? And what did you do later? Like, did you have to learn, unlearn things? That's probably the best way of asking it, because that sounds like a tough upbringing.
You know, I grew up in the 90s. You know, I started my career in 89 and you know, coming out of the 80s, it was a very Darwinian world, you know, the survival of the fittest, like all of that very much applied to kind of the management philosophy of especially, you know, high octane sales organizations. You know, I had to navigate it in order to survive, right? You know, you know, my first two companies, well, my first three companies, I averaged somewhere, I don't know, 7 or 8 years per company. So you have to find ways to reinvent yourselves. And so I would say that I embraced it to survive. Um, but I think as I evolved as a leader, I actually rejected the premise because, you know, I think I learned early on that the power of bringing people together is really where the magic lies. So the concept of pitting one team versus the other, or one individual or the other, yeah, I get the competitive piece with stack ranking and that sort of thing, but the concept of pitting one group against the other, it just tears things down. It undermines trust, and that trust currency is so valuable to build businesses. And this is, you know, even in the time when we started getting together during, you know, my enterprise days at SAP, I realized that the power was, you know, in how you build the bridges and the alignment in order to do the hard work to deliver, you know, great performance. So, you know, I rejected it because I don't think it was authentic to who I was. But I guess at the end of the day, I survived it at the same time.
Did you seek out mentors along the way, or was this something that your instinct told you, you know, to go in this particular direction?
You know, I think I definitely had some really good mentors, both formal coaches along the way, and then other executives. I had some great bosses along the way. Had some bosses that probably weren't great, but I had some fantastic bosses, and so I don't. I think this was fairly natural. The team chemistry of building alignment, I would say, was probably a natural kind of leadership approach from my standpoint. What I did have to learn though is that it's not about me at the end of the day. When you're ultra competitive at the end of the day, you want to win, and it's the response that you get as an individual to win. And that evolved to I want my team to win. And then
Right.
I realized at a point in time that it wasn't about me. It really had nothing. It had nothing to do with me. It was really about the power of the team And once I realized that's where the power from a leadership standpoint resided, that's when all of a sudden things really started to take off for me, in my opinion.
I would imagine today with that mindset that it's not about you, it's essential to have that as a trust factor. And it's hard. I think I tell people because when I'm coaching them, trust is so fragile. And if you make it about you, it instantly makes people not want to trust you. And it's so blatant, yet often leaders don't see it and they move forward and they push people and they really lack that empathetic gene.
It's interesting. I coach people about the power of vulnerability. And so if we think about the Shark Tank analogy that you shared earlier, not the Shark Tank, the brand, but the concept of a Shark Tank, um, you would think that being vulnerable would mean that you're going to show weakness, which means you're going to be eaten. You're going to be, you're going to be undermined or compromised in some way in your career. But what I realized is that if you're really focused on the power of the sum of the parts, when you actually show vulnerability, and that vulnerability could be in a number of different ways. I don't understand how to solve this problem. I need your help. Or guys,
Right.
this is really important. I'm struggling with this. And I need the ELT to help solve this problem. When you show that vulnerability, what it does is it shows that you're human, A, and B, I think it really it really brings the team together because they want to, they want to band together to solve the problem, to help their leader or to help the challenge that the team is driving. And that ties back to the concept that it's not about you, right? If you can get the team to go do the work, that's where the magic really happens. But I had a leader once upon a time when I was challenging him to show vulnerability. His message is, I would never do that. That is so counter to how I believe you have to lead to be successful. If I show vulnerability, then people won't respect me. And I said, you don't have it right. It's the opposite. That vulnerability will bring respect, the authenticity. And it's not more than just being authentic. It's actually showing vulnerability will bring a level of commitment and trust that's the power. And I have folks working for me today that have worked now for me, some of them for 4 companies over the last 25 years. And, I think that that's a product of the trust we've built,
Yes.
the work that they've done. But I think vulnerability is part of it, right? Because it builds that trust, that bond of trust.
And I've really witnessed you reaching out to people on your team and saying, "Hey, I don't get this. Can you help me?" And you should, I don't know if you would notice it, but they were so, I believe, felt honored that you would seek them out and ask them for their advice. It just made them feel that they mattered. And I think it's important, isn't it, today, to make people feel that what they do is important, it's meaningful, and that you trust them to seek out their advice.
And business is changing so quickly today. Like the this AI revolution is changing everything. And it's, businesses that were relevant are being challenged to stay relevant. Businesses that maybe at one point were essential to customers have become relevant or now maybe even becoming irrelevant. So the pace of how you ensure that a business stays strong and healthy is moving so fast because of the technology innovation, which means this chemistry of the team is, it's non-negotiable. You have to have it. You have to have the trust across the team. I know we're going to talk more about kind of leading teams and some of those challenges and those bruises and bumps that you referred to in your introduction. But AI is changing everything, and certainly it's accelerating the speed by which we have to change and adapt.
Ross, as a leader, how do you comfort your people? I'm sure that most people are concerned now. Are they going to be replaced? What's their career going to look like in 5 years? Will they have a career or even in a year? How do you give them the assurance when we really don't know how much AI is going to either take over positions or reconfigure how we do the work that we do?
It's interesting. We just ran a program that I think you're probably familiar with, Roz. We called it the Talent Accelerator Program. Once upon a time, we used to call it the Global Leadership Development Program, where we took top talent. We took 3 teams of I think 6 individuals, and we gave them a topic. And one of the topics that they had to solve for was how to leverage AI. and how to drive AI, how to help use AI to drive performance, but also drive employee growth in the mix. And we just wrapped this session up. It was a 3-month exercise, and they presented to the ELT, and we learned a lot about the power of AI. One of the observations is that people are really nervous. They believe if they lean into it, in some ways it's going to lead to their job becoming obsolete, and it's actually the opposite. I think AI can help provide speed and transparency. It can help people, drive and solve problems that couldn't be solved or would have taken a significant amount of time to solve. So one of the things that they talked about is they said, listen, from the top, we got to set the tone that it's okay. It's okay to feel vulnerable or a little scared or intimidated, but you've got to lean in. It's non-negotiable. You got to lean in, but it's okay. It's okay to color outside of the lines, right? It's okay to make a mistake. And it's not going to, if you're driving performance and you're serving your customers, whether you're in a direct customer facing role or an indirect role within these software companies that we participate in, AI is going to replace your job. AI is going to make you more relevant, more impactful, and more strategic around how you contribute to the success of the company. But we have to make sure people believe, right? We're going to meet them where they are.
Yeah. It's so much how you look at AI, your mindset for it, and to look at it almost as a co-pilot in your life. I mean, I use it in so many different capacities. To me, it's exciting, but I would imagine that some people will be feeling uncomfortable, insecure. And that's
For
where
sure.
your leadership could make them feel that it's only going to get better, but it's really how you start out. Mindset
Agreed.
is so critical. I have another question. I got tons. But Ross, you've experienced growth setbacks, meaningful, I call it inflection points that we don't always sign up for. Can you share a moment where most people, maybe they wouldn't know about it, something that reshaped the direction of your own career?
I think I kind of go through the evolution. This is my third CEO assignment, and I didn't get it right. I didn't get it perfect the first or second time, but I learned a lot. We had some great success. Um, but one of the things I recognized in this evolution is I love enterprise software. I love the power of leveraging software to drive a tangible business outcome that you can go measure. And I love working with a C-level executive to go and help shape the performance of their business. And at one stage in one of my assignments, I actually got away from that software focus. So I chased the job rather than really being true to where my strengths are, where my passion is, and what I'm good at. And so I think it's important that you think about what's your superpower, what are your passions, and leverage that intersection. Do you know what I mean? And if it's outside of that zip code, then don't do it. You know what I mean? Stick with what your passions are. But I don't know, maybe that's just part of the learning and the growth that we have to go through to get to where we are today.
So, what was it that tempted you to go against perhaps your instinct to take on this position? I'm curious.
Yeah, I think we get at different stages we get distracted by different things, right? The size of the role, the size of the business, the amount of people or the amount of revenue, um, you know, uh, the compensation. But you have to love the work. You have to love the work. These jobs are way too hard, Roz. Your job is a hard job, but you are so good at it that it makes it easy. You know what I mean? We have to love what we do. And if it's not the right fit, then you know what? I think you'll struggle with it. You know what I mean? You have to really and I mentor and coach a lot of young people, and I tell them do what you love. You know what I mean? Figure that out. I realize, you know, life is complicated and things are expensive and bills pile up. So you gotta make money at the same time, but you've got to do what you love at the end of the day. I think that's particularly important. But part of that is knowing who you are, right? And the only way to know who you are is to go through some twists and turns and some reinvention along the way.
No, it's not negotiable.
That's true. I think
Yeah.
it's also, I also encourage people to lean into the hard stuff, right? So let's say you're in the type of job in the right company in the right industry that you're passionate about, but it's inevitable that there's going to be a tough year or a tough budget or a tough customer or a tough boss, right? And I would encourage you to just lean into it, do the hard work, right? Because that's really where the growth is. We don't grow as much when we have like when we're the top of the waves. It's when we're fighting to get on top of a wave that where I think that the magic really happens. So you gotta lean into the hard work, and you've got to go through that reinvention. And when you come out of the reinvention, you'll say, wow, that was really hard. Whether it killed you or whether you survived it, or whether you got kind of kicked on your backside, you got to dust yourself off and get back on your feet. Um, it's the heart. It's the challenges where we really understand who we are, and we get more comfortable in just managing through that adversity. It's part of the challenge. It's part of the journey we're on.
Yeah, it takes a lot of perseverance and really, I think, believing in yourself, knowing where you have the greatest ability to contribute. That's also it's a lot of different factors coming into one. But certainly, I love what you're saying is it's not going to be easy, and not to look at it as failure, correct? Because I don't see you would look at something and say, well, I failed at this. You probably would say, well, here's what I learned. Here's what I could take as a lesson for my new position.
I think at the time I probably would have said I failed on the assignment, but you
Uh-huh.
know what? I think, hindsight is 2020, and with time you realize I actually learned a lot, and I learned a lot about myself. And when I think about the company that I'm leading today, we're in the employee experience space. We are using AI to help drive growth for employees, and we do that. We do that as a market leader, and we've made some whole bunch of acquisitions. We've built this agentic AI strategy, and I love the purpose, the higher purpose of going and helping employees grow their careers. Because if I've got a colleague of mine, and he shared with me that the power of what we do isn't just growing the individual, it's building a better workforce. It's empowering people to be their best selves, and they actually take it back to their communities and their kids and their marriages, and they go have an impact on the back end. And I think it's all about the concept of employee growth. So that's kind of the intersection that we sit in here at our company at Perceptyx. And it's such a privilege to be part of that, because you are driving and making an impact that's even better and even bigger than just delivering on a bottom line and hitting revenue and profits and serving customers. So I think that's kind of cool. If you can hit that higher purpose, that's euphoria, right? That's something to celebrate.
And really and truly, what you're saying is where do you make a difference, and how could you make a bigger difference?
That's true. That's true. The role that you play. How do you lean into the hard stuff to go and make an impact, right?
Yeah, years ago, I had a mentor, and I was going into my own business, and I asked him, will I be successful? I've checked out competitors, and I was very competitive in those days. You would have related to me probably years back, and
I'm
I
sure.
I checked out what my competitors are doing, and he said, "You've done everything right except wasting time checking out competition." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Be so different that you no longer have competition. Do what no one else is doing." And then he said, as you echoed, is really make a difference. It's really
Yeah.
about making a difference. So,
Yeah.
all right, I'm going to put you to the test. I have a question for you
Let's
that
do it.
I'm going to ask. What's the hardest decision you've ever made as CEO? And how do you know that it was right?
I kind of struggled with this question because I was kind of looking for that, the perfect answer. Do you know what I mean? I think I think being a CEO is about it's actually quite a lonely job. You think that you reach the CEO status, so you've got all the power. You're in the corner office, or the I guess the undefined virtual corner office, but it's actually a lonely job, and sometimes you just have to make hard decisions, right? And I hired an executive at one point in my career, and I hired him, it didn't work out, and I hired him, and then I had to take him out, and that was on me at the end of the day. That was, how did I know it was the right decision? Because I felt that it had to. The ELT is such an important part of a company. If you
Yes.
don't have a healthy, agile, balanced ELT, um, it'll come back and bite you on the backside. So this concept of equilibrium is very, very important. We'll talk a little bit about the ELT, but how did I know it was the right one? When I actually removed the individual, I brought him in, I took him out. When I realized when I made that decision, the actual performance of the business improved, right? People, all of a sudden people could breathe, right? And so I knew I made the right decision. I kind of made the right decision because I hired the wrong person, but that's on me. You know what I mean?
That's tough. And I've heard that it's lonely as a CEO on top. So you're just validating it. And the decisions sometimes you don't really know, but you have to make them. And I think it's better to make a decision than, just sit there and hope it'll go away.
This is an interesting point, Roz. And maybe it's a little bit about the software industry, right? Because things move so quickly, but speed of decision making is really, really important. So if I have to make 10 decisions in a week, even if let's say 7 of them are great, 2 of them I'm not sure, and 1 of them was terrible, I'd
Right.
prefer to make 10 decisions versus being absolutely certain on making 5 of the 10 that I need to make. Because as a CEO, you've got to set the tone for the business. You have to, you have to run a little bit faster than your competition, and you have to run a little faster than your employees because part of our job is to get them out of their comfort zone in order for them to grow. So as a result, there's just a very high level of accountability, and but it's a choice, right? I think if you're a CEO, you're a CEO because you really, really want to be in that seat. If you're
Yes.
if you're trying to decide if it's the right fit, then I'd probably go beyond an ELT. But I think the CEO role, you have to decide whether this is what you really want to do.
Yeah. It's so interesting, isn't it? And as you think about all of this, so I see this often, and I hate to use the word, but it's entitlement, and it sort of shows up in a very soft way, and then it builds, it creeps up, and then it erodes trust of teams. And you've said entitlement, if I'm not mistaken, is at the root of many failures. How do you spot it early and address it before it impacts the team? Because having just that one person, it could destroy the whole trust factor of a team.
For sure. That I've been using the expression that the entitlement is the root of all evil. And I always challenge. I used to say to my kids, right? Entitlement is the root of all evil. I think they probably understood it. They heard it enough. Tell me one good thing, Roz, that comes from being entitled. Just
No,
one positive outcome
nothing.
or attribute or character, something great that happens from being entitled. Doesn't exist.
It's destructive.
It's destructive, precisely. So I think when you identify it, you have to go and address it. You've got to call it out, and you have to have the courage. I think we usually see it. It's whether we act upon it to
That's
say,
right.
time out. This is not the way culturally we want to run our business. And when you apply it across an ELT, ELTs they're organic. They're moving and growing and morphing and flexing and maybe deflecting or maybe retreating. Like they're moving all the time, and you first of all need to understand the individuals on your ELT. You have to embrace what they're great at and leverage that and empower them and help them where they need things that they're working on that are part of their jobs. But you've always got to be thinking about the equilibrium of an ELT. And the one thing that can be very destructive, as you just said, Roz, to an ELT is if you get entitlement. And it can be quite damaging at the end of the day. So I think my advice would be is if you see it, identify it and just call it out, right? Never compromise the power of trust across your ELT because it has a direct correlation to the culture you build. And world-class companies, they perform for a whole bunch of different reasons, but a culture of trust is absolutely foundational in any successful business out there. And that rooting out the entitlement or just getting the right balance across an ELT is super important.
It's also interesting. I was working with a company a while back, and they had two people, we call them legacy employees. They had been in the company a lot longer, and you could see the entitlement. And it was actually unfortunate that they weren't having greater self awareness, but it took away from the team coming together in a cohesive fashion, and they didn't
Yeah.
see. You can't go to someone and say you've got entitlement. I mean, you could, but you just hope that they can see how it's not allowing the team to come together in greater collaboration, and it stopped the ability to have courageous conversations. It was so destructive. But I would have to fault the CEO because he didn't call it out.
Listen, that's part of the lonely job, right? The buck stops with you. You're accountable, and there are two challenges. Either you don't see it, and that's a problem, or
Yes.
you see it and don't do anything about it, and that's almost worse, in my opinion. But so I think this is where you need to show the power of vulnerability. You have to trust your ELT. You got to empower your ELT, and I think in terms of driving performance. As a CEO, I think the other thing you need to think about is you have to be consistent. You have to show up. You have to show up consistently. You've got to do the hard work. Don't expect your people to do anything that you're not going to do yourselves. If it's broken, then go fix it as an ELT. Go lead from the front, right? And listen to your people and empower and creating a safe environment where people can make mistakes. But I think it's a consistent. I've had a leadership call every Monday morning for, I don't know, the last 30 years of my career, right? And that's how you start Mondays, right? You start by getting your team together to go and work and start the work, right? So consistency and how you show up and leading from the front, all that good stuff, I think is particularly important.
I love that you brought the idea of consistency because I used to work for someone. I never knew who was showing up on Monday morning.
Yeah.
So I wish I would have worked with you, but it's off-putting to people,
Yeah.
and when they bring their personal life to work also, and it's not necessarily a good point, it could be so destructive. I love the fact that whenever I've been with you, you're always consistent. I never have to wonder. And even I take it if you're having a rough day, I would never know. And I don't see you as being fake. I see you as being very sensitive and tuned into people. And that's one of the attributes of a great leader. So never stop. All right. I
Thank
imagine,
you.
however, Ross, that there are moments when driving results and caring for your people, it could feel like you're being pulled in different directions. And you're known for being fast. You do everything fast. I describe you as unstoppable to other people. Someone says you can't do it. I say Ross will make it happen. He'll take it to the finish line. So, how do you balance humanity with the speed without sacrificing either?
Well, I think first of all, I think you need to have a release valve at the end of the day. Like these are marathons; these aren't sprints. Even though you feel like you're in a sprint, this will be my 154th quarter of my career, the most important quarter in our company history. Every quarter is the most important quarter in our company history. So you need to have a release valve. I like to ride my bike, and I try and do it every day. I try and burn off a little bit of steam. I think we have to stay healthy and recognize that our health is super, super important and pay attention to that, right? Not just for us, but also for our executives and their families. I think we absolutely need to make sure that we're looking at a holistic view of the health of the employee, not just the individual, but their families and and how they're performing. It ties back to their performance. I think we also need to pay attention to things that matter the most. Like we have two weddings coming up this year, which is
That's great.
super exciting. Both of
Wow.
our daughters are getting married, so I'm very very excited about that. It's going to be a major major milestone, and I think we need to be present, and we need to really pay attention to the things that really matter um, in our lives, in addition to our work. Because otherwise, it's another balance issue. Something's going to get out of balance, and you know what? It's going to manage you. So you got to pay attention. Pay attention to those important things.
Staying present seems to be the biggest challenge. I'm on so many Zoom calls, training, discussions, and getting people to really be present. Is there something that you do that perhaps allows people or gets them to tune in to really be there?
I think you have to be attentive and be in the moment, right? And be curious. Ask a whole bunch of questions, right? I always think that seek first to understand and then be understood. It's
Right.
hard, right? Because we're moving fast and we just want to tell them to just do this and things will be great. But sometimes you got to slow down to move fast, and that means you have to listen to where they are in the mix. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's and sometimes it's difficult because there's so much going on. There's so many moving parts. Um, so leaders are expected to project confidence, et cetera, et cetera. And they're navigating uncertainty every single day. How do you stay steady and confident when the pressure gets, a little bit high, it rises, and you're not really sure about the path? There's so much uncertainty that we live with every single day. How do you manage that?
I think we need to pay attention to the things that we can control. And there's things that we can't control, and you can't worry about those things because there's nothing you can do about it. I think you have to over communicate with your team. I think you got to be recognized that businesses that are performing well don't have a straight trajectory, right? They have one step forward, a step sideways, two steps forward, a step back, and all portions of their business may not be performing, perfectly.
Yeah.
And that's the job. The job is to go continue to drive growth. We were talking this morning on the back of this leadership call I had with this top talent team, and we were talking about the connective tissue between departments, right? Between sales and product, or product and service, or the role of finance and rev ops in supporting sales with data, and how we apply AI. We were talking about the connective tissue between these different departments. And I think AI has given us a huge opportunity to reassess how these pieces of the puzzle come together. Um, Focus on that, and focus on the customer. I had a CEO that I worked for a long time along the way, and he defined what I would call a true customer centric culture. It is all about the customer. Just put the customer in the center of everything that we do, and great things will happen. You'll pay your bills, you'll build great products, you'll get promotions, you'll grow your career, and but put the customer in the center of all of that at the end of the day.
Yeah. Wisdom shared. Thank you. One of the, I guess, greatest compliments a leader can receive is that people follow them again and again and again. You've earned that fellowship. What do you believe creates it and sustains it? And people always want to follow you. And it's such a compliment to you. And I know you're very humble. So this question may feel awkward, but I'd love you to offer advice. And how do you build that fellowship, especially in the world of AI?
Well, first of all, you have to care. You have to care about the individual, and and that has to be authentic, right? So I would say, if you provide them growth opportunities for their career, but also growth on how they can develop their skills, and you do it with an authentic leadership, and you do it at the same time you care for the individual, then I think the rest takes care of itself. You know what I mean? I think owning your mistakes, I think, are as important, right? If you don't get it perfect, then just call it out. Like, this was not my best work. Okay, let's move on. But I think that there's a correlation between the growth of the individual, the opportunity you help to provide them, authenticity of a leader, right? Having some of the things we talked about, like vulnerability and leadership, and challenging your team to help you, the equilibrium across that executive team. But you have to believe in the individual. And if you believe in the individual and you authentically believe in the individual, they're going
Yeah.
to want to follow you into battle because they believe that you can help them grow their careers. And I think I'm just super lucky at the end of the day, Roz, because I've been associated with so many really bright people, and they've crossed my career at a certain point in time, and and we've had some fun together and had some success, and and I'm just grateful for for the people that I've had the privilege to work with and work for along my career, and yeah, I think there's just a lot of gratitude.
I have to share a story. I don't know if you would remember this, but this goes back to 2016. And I was delivering a training program to your people. There may be, I guess, about 30. There happened to be one individual that was really challenging. And you probably know who I'm talking about.
I do.
And he's just whatever. He didn't like my slides. He didn't like my style, whatever it was. Maybe it was justified. I can't say. It was a long time ago. But anyhow, at the end of the day, you came over with this big smile. You were so warm and loving. And you said, "So, Roz, how'd you think it went?" I said, "I don't know." But I said, "You didn't tell me about him. Why didn't you warn me that he was going to be very confrontational?" And you said something that really impacted me. He says, "Roz, I knew you could have handled it. You did wonderful. And it was such a gift that you believed in me." I believe that's what you do. I believe that's what leaders have to emulate. Show your people that you believe in them. And here I was, an outside, contractor, but I'll never forget that you said that. So thank you. Many years
You're
later.
welcome. The other thing is you can't win them all, by the way.
Don't do it again.
Ross, right?
Oh, yeah, don't do it
Yeah.
again. That's all.
If our jobs were that easy, then they wouldn't need us, right? So,
Correct.
but
Right.
no, I'm grateful for what we've done together for sure. It's been a lot of fun.
Right. All right. So when your leadership chapter is written, we're coming to the end of our questions. So think about your leadership chapter. It's just out there. What do you hope it says about you? And more importantly, how people experienced you? What would you like it to say?
Well, first of all, I think I'd like to be recognized that I made an impact. And I'm not talking about financial performance. I'm talking about the impact in helping people build their careers and fulfill their potential and help them to grow. And not only as individuals, but help them with respect to their families and and all the things that go, all the stuff that's part of life. So I'd love to be known for that. And I guess, I'd like to, maybe to a certain extent, I never lost kind of an understanding of who I am at the end of the day. I stayed true to myself and I showed up to do my best work and I did it, with a lot of positivity and yeah, authenticity, although I think that's an overused frame. I think I just showed up. I showed up to do the work and I cared about the people and I made a difference.
For sure. And my last question, just to think about it, if you were speaking to a younger version of yourself, and to those people listening right now, what advice would you give them?
It's not about you. So don't for a minute think that it's about you, right? It's about, if you want to build businesses, it's the opposite. It's about the team. It's about the cause. It's about the higher purpose. It's what we're trying to, fulfill as an organization. And it's not about you. And once you figure that out as a leader, if you really have a good leadership DNA and this is what you want to do, that's when the hard work starts. But that would be my advice. And you'll get there. People get there. It's just how long it takes until you get there, right?
For sure, for sure. And just leaving us on this wonderful note of positivity, what are you most excited about in the future?
Well, I'm excited about welcoming two son-in-laws, two sons to our family, and celebrating two weddings. I'm excited about the trajectory of the business that we're working here in the employee experience space. We're the market leader. I've got an amazing board that I work with. I've got super smart people that are collaborative and They provide some great counsel. Yeah, listen, I'm a very positive, kind of half full person, Roz. You know, even if the world's a little crazy right now.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think I'm excited about what the next adventure is for me and for my family and for our business.
So you've given us a rare look into the kind of leader we want to follow. I look forward to working with you again, Ross, and I'm so honored to have you in my life and the difference you've made to the people listening to this podcast. Thank you.
Well, thanks for the opportunity, Roz, and your kind words. It's been fun. Great to reconnect after all these years, and look forward to continuing to work and do some great work together.
Thank you. Bye for now.